Hey guys, and welcome back to another one of my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. videos. So close to the end of Season 5, I did state that I'm going to be doing a rewatch of the first 5 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. over the period between the airing of the finale and the airing of the premiere of Season 6, that's summer 2019, and I'm going to be doing all these videos about all the Easter eggs, all the foreshadowing, and all the things that you notice when you give a thing a second try, a second eye, or all the things that were noticeable back then when we watched Season 1, because we weren't privy yet to all that we would get on Seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now before I get started, I'm going to be doing this over the course of so many videos. On some videos, I'm going to be just doing Easter eggs and references and parallels out of one episode that will also include the foreshadowing that was presented on that episode. But then on other videos, I'm going to be doing 3 to 5 episodes, and that's going to be the usual. The usual is going to average 4 probably. The thing here as well is I'm not going to be doing this kind of introduction over the course of each and every video. I'm just doing it right now because I wanted to let you know, so that you don't think I'm going to be doing like 100 plus episodes over the course of 100 plus videos. That's not going to be the case really. But one other thing though, before I get started with the pilot of this series, because this is going to be one of those videos dedicated to only one episode, is basically that I'm going to be posting one of these videos, maybe 2 a week. I'm still doing my rewatch, still enjoying my rewatch, and apparently seeing it in a different light with a second eye, as I just stated, makes it a lot better, even better than I remembered. That being said, and without further ado, let's get started with the series premiere for Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was also titled Pilot, like so many series out there. Now, in 2013, when the series started, it was only natural with a series that spun off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to be more precise, of the Avengers, that the pilot of the series does a lot of referencing to the events of the Avengers and other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Nonetheless, this episode had a fair share of those, like a lot of them. So to get started, there was the narration by Daisy, back then known to us as Skye, at the very beginning of this pilot episode.
The secret is out. For decades, your organization stayed in the shadows, hiding the truth. But now we know. They're among us. Heroes. And monsters.
Now that is basically the reference that starts it all. The organization is S.H.I.E.L.D., the heroes are the Avengers, and the monsters are the Chitauri, and even the Hulk, obviously, judging by that first scene. The series premiere, after all, to start with shots, moments out of the movies. We've got Iron Man zapping through the sky, a shot of Thor's hammer mid-air, and a shot of Cap's shield as well. Now as Daisy narrates the monsters part out of her opening statement, we get 2 quick shots of the Chitauri and the Hulk. But next up though, we've got Ace Peterson, son to Mike Peterson, aka Deathlok, or the man who would become Deathlok, and the kid is basically window shopping for action figures of the original 6 Avengers from the 2012 The Avengers, so pretty much the only Avengers that were back then known to people out of the battle on New York. But however though, with the names Ace Peterson and Mike Peterson comes a little bit of trivia, because 1, Mike Peterson ended up becoming the Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of the comic book character Deathlok. 2, while there are multiple versions of Deathlok in the 616 continuity, none of them goes by the name Mike Peterson. And 3, the character of Mike Peterson was not supposed to be Deathlok out of the comics. The original plan was for him to be this original character created for the series. But moving on...
What does S.H.I.E.L.D. stand for, Agent Ward?
Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement, and Logistics Division.
Which is what S.H.I.E.L.D. has been introduced as within the Marvel Cinematic Universe and since the very beginning. But on the other hand, and in the comics, and since the organization's creation on its pages, it's had 2 names. Now the first of these 2 names was in use until 1991, Supreme Headquarters, International Espionage, and Law Enforcement Division, while the other one was used post-1991, changing the organization's name into Strategic Hazard Intervention, Espionage, Logistics Directorate. But because I'm going in order, more on that espionage part of the organization's name in a moment here. Because before we get to that, there was Grant Ward's "It means someone really wanted our initials to spell out S.H.I.E.L.D." Now I personally believe that this was all about the joke during Iron Man, when Coulson kept referring to the organization by its full name before he did ask Pepper Potts at the very end of the movie to just call them S.H.I.E.L.D. We found it too long, just call us S.H.I.E.L.D. But however though, and on the Agent Carter one-shot, it seems S.H.I.E.L.D. has always been called S.H.I.E.L.D., and that was once again confirmed on Captain Marvel, the events of which is set in 1995, when Nick Fury keeps referring to himself and identifying himself as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. But Maria Hill's existence on the pilot episode in and out of itself is a reference to the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, or to be more precise, her first and only appearance back then within the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie side, that being on the 2012 The Avengers. But okay, we've also got the Chitauri neural link that Ward retrieves at the very beginning of the pilot episode, turns it in to Maria Hill a couple of scenes later, and that's basically a reference to the Chitauri invasion on the Avengers. Now it's also a reference to, or a little piece of foreshadowing to, all the Chitauri artifacts that have come through the Marvel Cinematic Universe over the years to follow. Now on that same scene, Maria Hill picks up the artifact and hands it to one agent Kirk Skadden, and Kirk Skadden happens to be an employee of the company that provides props and whatnot for the show. Now here's the interesting part. The same company did provide props for Runaways 5 years later, a little bit over 5 years later, that being in 2018, and one of those props was a newspaper with an obituary for one Kirk Skadden. Only the second time around, the newspaper, the obituary, identified him as a doctor. But here are a few quick ones. Maria Hill's people thinking the craziest thing in the world was a billionaire in a metal suit, that's a reference to Iron Man. Her aliens invaded New York, that's a reference to the Chitauri invasion and the Avengers movie. The other phrases she used within the very same conversation, a giant green monster, that's a reference to the Hulk, a costumed hero from the 40s, that's a reference to Captain America, and finally a god. That was a reference to Thor. But another quick one was Ward's "I know that Agent Coulson was killed in action, I read the full report." Now that was once again a reference to the Avengers and the stabbing of Coulson to his death at the hands of Loki. Now following that statement, Coulson's goofy entrance, the whole 9 yards really, that will forever be a reference to the Marvel Cinematic Universe on every single episode, because Coulson was kinda goofy on the movies as well. Like no matter how serious it does get on the series, he's always maintained that side of his personality, that goofy side.
Director Fury faked your death to motivate the Avengers.
Well, the death of a common ally is a particularly effective team builder.
Now that might not be the most accurate take on the story, as we do figure out later on in the events of the same season, but however, the motivate the Avengers part will always hold true, considering his death did indeed bring them together, and that to this day, the Avengers, the original 6 Avengers that is, do believe that Coulson is dead, and have never found out either that he's been revived. But anyway though, back to the espionage bit out of the comic book S.H.I.E.L.D. name. Now exactly one scene after that scene with Maria Hill's question, what does S.H.I.E.L.D. stand for? We got Coulson's statement about, Ward having the highest marks on espionage since Romanov. Now that felt like a double reference, one to the name of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics, and the other one to Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. But we're still on the pilot, and we've still got a lot more. We've got Daisy, back then just Skye, in the diner going for the infamous, with great power. Now even though she did end the statement the wrong way, that was just a reference to the infamous quote, one that also ended up being a staple of Spider-Man's Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility. But next up though is Simmons asking Ward on their first meet,
"So, are you excited to be coming on our journey into mystery?"
Now the way she said it, highlighting the words journey into mystery, that just triggered thoughts of the comic book series with the same name, but interestingly enough as well, this series, on its 83rd issue in 1962, did introduce Thor into Marvel Comics. But anyway though, all of these first meets are basically leading into their first mission together, which is finding Mike Peterson. And in order to find Mike Peterson, they need to find that person that phoned Mike Peterson at the very beginning of the episode as he pulled that heroic act of his. So they do find Skye, Coulson and Ward, start interrogating her, and a couple of minutes through said interrogation, she states S.H.I.E.L.D. covered up Project Pegasus. Now for one thing, Project Pegasus is right out of the comics and it has a similar nature to the one that it has within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But on this very episode, it was meant to be more of a reference to the very same place where the Tesseract was under experimentation early on in the events of the Avengers and under directive from Nick Fury. Now that very place, the HQ to Project Pegasus, is the same place that we got to see once again years later, as early as the events of Captain Marvel are set, which are basically set in 1995. Now the next two though are more about pop culture or possibly nerd culture references, because Ward describing Skye as one of those sweaty cosplay girls is kind of interesting because it is related usually to Comic-Con events. But also his description of her cosplaying around Stark Tower, that's very fitting considering this is the kind of thing that people dress as. Iron Man, superheroes from the comics. But in the wake of this interrogation that we were talking about for a while now, Jemma describes the Centipede that Daisy mentioned earlier, or basically what happens to be an attempt towards creating the Centipede, as very similar to the serum created by Dr. Erskine in the 40s. Coulson, on the other hand, responds, super soldiers. Now Erskine over here is a reference to Alexander Erskine, both in the comics and on Captain America, the first Avenger, while super soldiers is definitely a reference to both the movie and Captain America himself. But we are closing in on the end of the Easter eggs and references on the very premiere of the series, because Coulson, referring to the serum being used over here as extremis, was basically a double reference. The first of these two references is to the 2005 Iron Man comic book arc that carried the same title, Extremis, and the second one was to a movie where Extremis is front and center, Iron Man 3, and that only released a few months before the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. pilot aired. Still on the Centipede, Jemma identifying the serum as emitting a lot of gamma radiation could have been a reference to the Hulk and Bruce Banner, considering these kind of radiations are basically what powers its transformation. But Coulson's I've seen giants up close and that privilege cost me nearly everything, that was yet another reference to what he thought back then in the events of the series was just a near-death experience at the hands of Loki during the events of the 2012 The Avengers. But that though was it for Easter eggs on the pilot of the series premiere. But let's talk some foreshadowing done on that episode, because when you look at it, rewatch it, you realize these people might not have known everything they want to do in the future of the series, but they did have a plan. So number one, but the good ones, the real deal, they are not heroes because of what they have. Now this is not exactly the biggest foreshadowing, not the biggest Easter egg, but nonetheless that was the first big speech that Coulson made on the series, and it's not surprising that the title of the 100th episode of the series, The Real Deal, was taken right out of it. However though, the speech being made to Mike Peterson in the presence of Daisy would be foreshadowing as well to the two of them not just becoming heroes, but rather superheroes. But number two, the doctor who clears Fitz and Simmons tells Maria Hill, Tahiti, he does not know, does he? To which she responds, and he never should. Now all of that did foreshadow what we get to know about Coulson's revival later on in the events of Season 1. But number 3, May's refusal to join up with Coulson on board of the bus, or at least initial refusal, that's pretty much very pain from the days in Bahrain. But number 4, Ward sabotaging the interrogation with Daisy the moment she started talking Centipede serum. Now that was definitely subtle foreshadowing towards Ward being Hydra. Number 5, the referring to Fitz and Simmons as Fitz Simmons from the get-go was really one of the greatest foreshadowing moments on this series. Like the series decided, okay, you know what, we're gonna give them the ship name before anyone else does. And finally, number 6, which is not really foreshadowing, but I'm engineering, she's biochem. Who knew that 5 seasons in, and 100 episodes post this pilot episode, Fitz would have to use the same line he introduced himself and Simmons with to Ward to sort of explain their capabilities to another Hydra member, that being Ruby on Season 5. With that being said though, I promise I'm going to try to make these videos 8 to 12 minutes. This one might have went beyond those, but this one had a lot of Easter eggs, and you might have noticed that. But do let me know in the comments if you plan on rewatching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. before Season 6 airs. Let me know as well if you did like this video, if there are any Easter eggs that you remember out of the pilot of the series that I kinda missed over here. And finally, let me know if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, subscribing to this channel, and enabling notifications to get updated on my future videos, community posts, and live streams. But until the next time you tune in for another one of my videos, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this one, and have a great day.